And we have chosen a pathway that's focused around prevention, reversal, and optimization of your health. Being at the core, we know today that almost 80 to 90% of people die from chronic illness. That's our focus. And where does chronic illness come from? 90% of chronic illness comes from lifestyle. And we know that if we can transform lifestyles, we can change the paradigm of why people die so early from chronic illnesses. And at the core of that is lifestyle. And the core of getting the kind of lifestyle that's focused requires transformation. Therefore, our topic today, transformation and enrollment. At the core of this journey are those two fundamental attributes, or what we'll call ways of being. You have to be transformed, and in the transforming process, you enroll. In Buddhism, we talk about the three-path journey. That journey is from dependence to independence to interdependence. It's the same thing with health. You remove yourself from a place of not having knowledge or having developed the habits and lifestyle that is healthy to a place where you, as an individual, we call that place a place of independence, now understand the habits that would give you a long and healthy lifestyle. But to move to that next level, where transformation lives, requires enrolling others into the gifts that you have achieved in becoming free and independent. And therefore, the ability to move from independence to interdependence requires enrollment of other people into that lifestyle. So let's start today with the conversation about freedom, health as an attribute of freedom. Why do we were born free, but we constrain ourselves in the process. Why is freedom important? First of all, it allows us to walk away from fear, because fear, if you're afraid, you're not free. Freedom is only for people who are not afraid. Fear and freedom do not live in the same space. And when you're free, everything is possible, because the things that give you access to what you want is the action that you take. And therefore, anything and everything that you want is available, and that is the space of possibility. Possibility lives only when you're free. And therefore, freedom, I call this the freedom box. There are 5 things that drive freedom. Health is number 1, knowledge is number 2, relationships number 3, time number 4, money is number 5. We focus on health. You can find that support in other places. Health is what we call well-being. Another name for that, for you being, and there are 4 attributes to that: nutritional, physical, emotional, and environmental. But it's very important that this journey begins from dependence. Most people are dependent. They're dependent on their doctors. They are dependent on the restaurants where they've outsourced their meals. They're dependent on all the things that they buy to be healthy. They are dependent on the supplements they take to be right, to be manufactured properly. And so the movement from dependence to independence, it's a very, very big transforming step. And it requires that you take ownership and an understanding, specifically with regard to health, of those 4 things. So let's talk about those 4 things. And, throughout the year, we're going to be walking through them in a lot more detail. Most people don't understand what nutrition is. When they talk about food, they think about food in the concept of calories. No, we're talking about nutrients. That's different from calories. Most foods will come with nutrients and calories. The body specifically requires more nutrients than calories. It requires both. And that's why food is broken, or nutrition is broken into two different things, into what we call macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients are the big macromolecules like carbohydrates, proteins, fats, fiber, and water. There are 5 of them, macronutrients. And there are rules around each of them that are really comprehensive and necessary. Under micronutrients, we have 2 specific groups. We have vitamins and minerals. Really, really critical for our health. The underlying biochemistry uses calories as the energy source to power everything else. So the fuel for powering is important. Even more so, important are the nutrients that drive the overall biochemical pathways, as they're called, which is what drives my body. The biochemical pathways are powered by the calories. And in the biochemical pathways, the nutrients are what are used for the building blocks for repair, for regeneration, and for excretion, right? Very, very important processes that keep us alive. That's nutrition. Let's talk about physical well-being. Physical well-being has to do with strength, with stamina, with flexibility, and with balance. Very, very important issues for you to stay healthy and for you to live a long life, especially balance. Most older people die from falling. Very, very important issue. So keeping your balance and having strength to do the things that are necessary for you to be healthy are really important. Again, strength, stamina, flexibility, and balance. Let's look at emotional well-being. Very, very important that our emotional well-being is really powerful. And at the core of emotional well-being is something that is really amazing. And it is that issue of forgiveness. The ability to free ourselves from the baggage and constraints of our life centers around, first of all, understanding freedom and the opportunity of possibility and walking away from fear. But secondly, forgiving and forgiving all of those who have trespassed against you, as it says in the Lord's Prayer. It's a very important issue. It frees your mind now to dwell on possibility. When you're constrained by unforgiven factors, as we call them, it is impossible for you to dwell in possibility and therefore ride possibility all the way into the sunset. So it's a very important issue, emotional well-being. Most people have big challenges with their emotional well-being and the ability to center themselves and stay in a place of forgiveness and humility. The gifts we have been given are gifts, so we cannot be arrogant about it. They are gifts that we're supposed to share with others, so we can have communion and we can all come to that place of finding freedom and peace. It's very important that we and the gifts we've been given find humility and forgiveness so we can have the emotional well-being to find community and to share. And finally, environmental well-being. Increasingly, we live in a very, very toxic environment. Therefore, it is important for us to look for means of having clean air, clean water, clean food, and clean things that we buy to ensure that we don't live in a very toxic body. Toxicity is one of the most challenging issues within the body. And that toxicity leads to a lot of chronic illness, even if you have a lot of good healthy habits. Again, let me just go back to the emotional well-being. As we know, stress is one of the biggest causes of chronic illness. And most of the stress comes from perceptions of ourselves, a lack of authenticity and integrity, and a lack of purpose and focus as to where we're going. So very, very important issues. So again, the only way you can move from dependence to independence is to build freedom. And at the core of it is health. Without health, there is no freedom. All these attributes are very important. Without knowledge, there is no freedom. Without relationships, there is no freedom. Without an appropriate and adequate use of time, there is no freedom. And if you're broke, there's no freedom. These 5 things are really critical. When one of them is absent, the whole box collapses. So it is important in moving from dependence to independence that you take control of those 5 attributes and begin to define the essence of your freedom. Because when you're always broke, you cannot have emotional well-being. You're always dependent on somebody else to help you. If you don't have enough nutrition, you're not free because your body needs the nutrients. If you have some physical incapacities or you're incapacitated physically, you're not free. You have to depend on a wheelchair or other people. And if you have a lot of toxicity, it actually affects your brain with neuroinflammation. And therefore you get depression, dementia, and Alzheimer's and all the other things that arise from neuroinflammation. So at the core here is this conversation of how we journey from dependence to independence.